Welcome to my channel, Abigail Inspires. I'm Abigail Chidera Chibueze, and today we are going to be discussing a very, very interesting topic titled How to Communicate Better. So, before we dive into this topic, before we dive in, I would like us to understand the basis of communication. What is communication? Communication is associated with a Latin word known as communicare, which means to make common. So communication can fundamentally be defined as the process of sharing or process of making common ideas, experiences, thoughts, information, or anything at all between two or more individuals or a machine. Yes, you tend to communicate with a machine if you don't know. Yes. So, and it's usually for, it could be for political purpose, it could be for a social purpose, it could be for economical purpose, or any purpose entirely. Communication has characteristics. Before I state the characteristics of communication, I want us to understand that communication is a vital tool for human existence. It's a vital tool for human existence. Take note of this. Communication is a vital tool for our existence. So we're going into the characteristics of communication. Communication is a two-way process. We need to understand the fact that communication is a two-way process. It's important for us to know that communication, it's a two-way process. Yes, it cannot just be a sender. There has to be a sender and a receiver. Communication is not one way, it's two ways. It is important. I repeat, it is important. Communication is interactive. Yes, communication is not complete when it's not interactive. Communication is not fully communication when it is not interactive. Communication is transactional. There must be an exchange for communication to take place. When exchange doesn't take place in communication, communication is not complete. So communication is interactional. Yes, why do we communicate, or importance of communication? We communicate because communication satisfy our need for social inclusion. Let me repeat that. One of the reasons why we communicate is because communication satisfies our desire or need for social inclusion. What is social inclusion? Social inclusion just basically means being included in your society, or let me use the word, being involved in your society, being part of your society. And communication satisfies that need of ours. Nobody wants to be ostracized from their society. Nobody wants to be the weirdo in their society. So communication actually satisfies our need to be involved, to be a part of a community, to be a part of a society. Let me give a very, very simple example. A child that is being bullied is not able to communicate with his peers. There's no communication between them. Nothing is common between them. That is why he's in a situation that is not very, very nice at all. Exactly. So when there is no communication, you're not able to fit into your society, and that's very, very terrible. Another thing about communication is that communication helps us to know who we are. In health education, we call this the ego function. The ego function. Communication helps us to understand who we are as human beings. For instance, a child that is being born, that child doesn't even know if he is a boy or if she is a girl. That child doesn't even know her name or his name. That child just basically just cries to get whatsoever he or she wants. So when we start growing, we start learning how to communicate, and it helps us to know who we are. The child starts knowing, oh, my name is this, I call this woman mama, I call this man daddy, I belong to this family. And even we as grown up, we don't get to know who we are very much if we cannot communicate, because we need to ask questions. We need to get our questions answered for us to know who we really are. Another important aspect of communication is that communication influences behavior. My Bible will say evil communication corrupts good manner. This just means that you become like the people you communicate with gradually. Whosoever you're communicating with, you tend to start collecting some things from that person. Yes, communication influences behavior. In health education, we help people, we help communities, we help individuals put aside their bad practices, all those bad practices that affect their health, and take on good practices that will improve their health. And we can't do that if we cannot communicate. Communication is the foundation for influencing any form of behavior. Communication helps to shape an individual. This is very, very important. Now, moving into why we find it difficult to communicate. Yes, why do we find it difficult to communicate? With everything I've studied, with everything I have noticed, We find it difficult to communicate because we forget communication is a two-way process. Can you imagine? We forget communication is a two-way process, and it's the truth. Mostly in a relationship, there are two senders, and when there are two senders, communication can't take place properly. Imagine, or when there are just receivers, communication can't take place properly. When communication is only one way, it cannot take place properly. Like for instance, in a relationship, when there's only one person who is sending, and the other person is not receiving, the other person is not understanding, or the other person cannot send or receive, that relationship isn't going to work because communication is not taking place properly. Communication is a two-way process. It's not a one person something. For communication to work, two parties have to actually communicate. Another reason why we find it difficult to communicate is that when we communicate to people, there is nothing in common, or there is nothing to make common. There is no common ground. There's no place you both can stand. So it makes it very difficult, because when this one is saying A, this person is saying B, it makes it difficult for you guys to understand each other. So communication basically means making common. So when there is nothing to make common, communication is going to be difficult for sure. Communication is going to be difficult when there is nothing to make common, or when there's nothing the people communicating have in common. Communication is it's going to be very, 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 very difficult. So we're moving into how lack of proper communication affects us. Like, a lot of people have experienced this. I personally have experienced this. So lack of proper communication makes us lose important relationships. Yes, lack of proper communication makes us lose important relationships. Please, I know a lot of people have experienced this. Sometimes that relationship that didn't go well is just because you people were not able to communicate well. That beautiful friendship you lost is because you people could no longer communicate with each other. Sometimes it's just the silence. When communication stops, the relationship stops growing. Yes, once communication stops, the relationship stops growing, and it just starts going down till there's no longer a relationship. Another thing about lack of proper communication is that it has a way of making us feel insecure. It has a way of just taking out our confidence. Let me give an example. When a person wants to communicate, like in a group of friends, when this person wants to communicate and the other group of persons tend to misunderstand what this person is saying, this person begins to think and feel like, I can't reach out to these people, so I rather keep quiet. Before you know it, gradually, when that person is in that group of friends, that person doesn't want to talk. That person's confidence, that person's self-esteem is already being affected, because that person cannot voice out. Communication is sharing ideas. Communication is sharing information. When you can't share, you can no longer communicate. So when lack of proper communication just affects our self-esteem as a whole, and lack of proper communication affects our psychological health, our psychological being entirely. Like, psychologically, you are affected if you cannot communicate properly. Yes, when you can't communicate properly, you begin to take things in. You begin to take a lot of things in. This is when overthinking sets in. Before you know it, you don't even know when you become depressed. Once you can no longer communicate with your society, once you have excluded yourself from your society, once you are just isolating yourself, you're being affected psychologically. So lack of proper communication does this to us. So we're moving into how to communicate better. So one word, how to communicate better. Listen, listen, listen. It is very important to listen so that you can communicate better. If you cannot listen, communication is going to be hard work for you. For instance, two friends, when they are not ready to listen to each other, they cannot communicate. You can't even stand on a common ground with somebody if you cannot listen. Listening is very important. Listening is even a skill. It is the ability to be attentive to what someone is saying and interpret it well. When you can't listen, you cannot even interpret what this person is trying to tell you. So you will end up having misunderstanding. If you want to be able to communicate, you have to learn how to listen. I have this friend that can listen so well. and it has made her relationship with people wonderful. Why? Because she's able to listen. Let me tell you, when people find out that someone is listening to them, it makes them want to open up better. Yes, when people find out that when I'm talking, people are actually listening, it makes them want to talk more. So listening is very important for relationship to work. Relationship cannot work if there is no listening. And please remember, I said relationship is a two-way process. So this listening, it has to be two-way too, because when it's only one person that is listening, communication too is not taking place. So we all have to learn how to listen in order for communication to take place. Another thing we should do to be able to communicate better is to learn how to control our emotions. Don't be quick to react without understanding the situation fully. You know, some of us, we really wear our emotions on our face. And when we communicate, especially we human beings, when we communicate, we don't just read the person's words, we don't just read the person's lips. We are looking at the person's facial expression to understand how this person is feeling about this thing you're saying. So when you're not able to control your emotions, you can discourage that person that is talking to you. You can make that person talking to you want to withdraw from you. And that is, don't overthink. Some of us that are very quiet and think a lot, once someone is saying something, you're already thinking about 10 scenarios in your head. You're already thinking about, what does this person really mean? Is there a hidden word in this thing that this person is saying? Like, chill, calm down. Don't overthink the situation. Try to interpret what this person is saying, and you cannot do that if you don't listen. These things I just listed are very important for you to communicate better. So I don't want to make this video very long, and I really hope you have learned something. Please don't forget to share, don't forget to like, don't forget to comment. I want to know what you think about this. I want to know what you think about communication. Have you had any problem with communication? You can write it in the comment section so that we'll see what to do about it. Thank you very much for staying to the end.